Hey guys, and welcome to another episode. Today in this video, I'm going to show you how to remove a stud from your car. Now, I'm not talking about a sexy stud like me or something like that. I'm talking about a stud like this. It's a mechanical part that will hold two pieces of metal together. It's threaded on both ends, and you will occasionally run across this when you're working on cylinder heads, exhaust manifolds, or other stuff like that. They can be very tricky to work with sometimes because occasionally they become very stuck and removing them might be a little bit difficult. Today in this video, I'm going to show you how to easily remove these things by using a couple tools. On the car that I'm working on right now, there's a turbocharger and it has studs that are attached through the exhaust side of it. We're going to have a stud here, and we also have studs down here on the exhaust manifold, and that's what bolts up to the cylinder head. Now, it doesn't matter if you have this kind of stud that doesn't have any kind of thing on the end that you can grip onto it, or if you have a stud like this that has a little Torx end on the end of it. You can remove either of these using this method that I'm going to show you today. So if you're lucky enough to have a stud that has an end like this to it, you should be able to use an external Torx socket to take it off. You can see that it mounts right up to the end of it, and you should be able to just loosen it like a regular bolt. But if you have a stud that's like this, that has nothing that you can grip on the end of it, you're not going to be able to use that external Torx socket on the end to take it out. What you are going to need to remove the stud is two nuts that will thread onto it. They have to be the same size and the same thread pitch so that you can tighten both nuts on there at the same time. Now I'm going to show you how doing that is going to be able to remove the stud. So we're going to get started with working on this stud right here found on the turbocharger. So I'm going to grab one of my nuts. Okay, I'm going to grab this nut here and slide it on the stud. Now you're going to want to have it so that it's got a lot of meat on here, but you want to have it so that it's far enough down the stud that you can put another nut on there. So you grab another one after it's at that point. So see how there's a little gap between the two? Well, you want to push it down so that these are touching. And then you're going to want to lock these in place so they're not going to want to spin if you were to turn these with a wrench. To do that, I'm going to grab two of the same size wrenches, put them on top of both nuts, and then I'm going to tighten them together. Now, the game plan is you're going to want to have it so that these nuts have enough pressure locking them down so that the stud is going to want to thread out once we loosen on this nut right here. So the game plan now is to loosen this and twist this back. So you can see that it's spinning, so you're going to want to tighten these down a little bit more. Now, if you can tighten them further down the stud, the better off you're going to be. And the reason why that is that the stud isn't going to want to spin and flex while you're trying to work against it. So I think that should do the trick. And then at this point, we're going to put pressure on the back nut, so the one that's closest to the side that's threaded in, and we're going to loosen it so we can extract the entire thing and pull it out. Now, if you have a flare nut wrench like this, it's going to be able to grab the nut better without stripping it versus a regular open-ended wrench. So whenever you're ready, just slide it over top of the rear nut, and then you're going to want to loosen this. So lefty-loosey, righty-tighty. Loosen this, and then hopefully the entire thing should come out and start spinning, as it is right now. If you can get a little bit of penetrating fluid on the threads, it'll make it so that it's going to want to come out a little bit easier. And the same thing works if you can get it on the back side of the flange. So if we're going to be working on this one right here, for instance, you'd also want to get penetrating fluid on the back side of it so it penetrates into the threads even more. If you're working on a very old car, that penetrating fluid is going to be your best friend, especially if there's a decent amount of rust as well. So the more rusty it is, probably the more difficult it's going to be to remove the stud. But if you take your time, you should be able to remove it as we're doing right now. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it can be done. Once you're at this point, you're almost there. It's going to be quite tedious just to turn the stud 1/6 of a turn at a time, but that's all that's left to be done so that the stud can be removed from the component. Now, if the stud doesn't want to break free, do not try and muscle it, as the studs are not as strong as you would think. Try to wiggle the stud back and forth to attempt to break the rust free from the threads of the stud. If you have to, as a last resort, add a little bit of heat to the stud to try and break free the rust even more. Just be careful because you don't want to use too much heat where you will potentially warp the part that you're trying to remove the stud from. So then once you have this thing out, it's pretty simple to remove the nuts from the stud. All that you're doing is throwing your 13 mil wrench on there again, throw the other one back on there, and you're just backing that pressure off of the other nut. And that comes out just like that. Unthread the bolts, unthread the nuts from both ends, and then your stud is basically good to go, and it's removed. Now, doing it this way is probably the easiest way to get this done. Now, I have had bolts and studs that were so stupidly tight in there that when you try to do this, it will break off the threads on the actual stud. Now, worst comes to it, you're gonna have to remove it, remove the broken end of the stud by drilling it out and then just buying a whole new stud. But basically what we're trying to do is just get this out any way we can. Now that was probably the easiest way, and I've worked on cars that are a lot more difficult than that. But if you do this method and you take your time, using maybe a little bit of heat too might help, along with some more penetrating fluid, and you should be able to remove that stud. Now, of course, if you do have the stud that has the threaded end on the end of it, it makes life so easy. And because of that, you can just unthread it like that. To show you how simple it is to remove one of these studs that have an end on the end of it, I'm using an external socket, an external torque socket. Just put it on the end of the stud and then loosen this up. Lefty loosey, righty tighty, lift, and that's it. And then just thread that out of the cylinder head, and that's good to go. Now, if you're replacing your stud, replacing it with something like this would be super simple because putting it in and then disassembling it later is very easy. But the tricky part is to remove the studs that don't have this end on them. I really hope this video has helped you guys out, because if you guys are in this little position that I am, it sucks. So if you have a solution to it, or if you have an approach as to how you can get to it easily, it's gonna make life super simple. Now, when I put my big turbo on my Mini Cooper, I'm not going to be installing those regular studs on there. I'm gonna be installing the ones that have an external spline on them. So I can use an external torque socket to install these and take them out. Now, worst case scenario, if your stud did break, I'll include a link of a tool that you can use to remove a broken stud from a cylinder head or something like that, and it should help you guys out. If this video has helped you guys out, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and write me a comment if you have any suggestions. If you guys have any questions regarding the video, throw them down in the comment section below, and I'd be more than happy to help. Again, guys, thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.